The homestead appeared through the morning mist like a broken promise, sagging fence posts and weathered gray wood that had seen better days, and Katherine Daniels reined her mare to a stop at the property line with her heart hammering against her ribs because this was it. This was everything she had left in the world. The year was 1877, and she had traveled alone from St. Louis to this valley outside Fort Collins, Colorado, with nothing but her late father's land claim papers, $300 sewn into her petticoat, and a determination so fierce it scared even her sometimes. The cabin looked worse up close. The roof sagged in the middle, 2 windows were missing their glass, and the front door hung at an angle that suggested one good wind would finish the job. But it was hers. The land office in town had confirmed it that very morning. Her father had filed the claim 3 years ago, intending to bring the family west. But then the fever took him and her mother within weeks of each other. Katherine had been 20 years old then, working as a seamstress in her aunt's shop, saving every penny and waiting until she turned 23 before making this journey alone. Her aunt had called her foolish. Her cousins had called her desperate. But none of them understood that staying meant marrying Henry Sullivan, the butcher's son with wandering hands and whiskey breath, and Katherine would rather face down a grizzly bear than spend her life as that man's wife. She dismounted and tied her horse to what remained of a hitching post. The silence out here was different from city silence. It pressed against her ears, vast and empty, broken only by the whisper of wind through tall grass and the distant call of a hawk. The valley stretched wide and green, mountains rising to the west like jagged teeth against the blue sky. Beautiful and terrifying all at once, the inside of the cabin smelled of dust and animal droppings. A family of mice scattered when she pushed the door open wider. The single room was maybe 15 feet square, with a stone fireplace that had partially collapsed, a dirt floor packed hard as cement, and enough cobwebs to clothe an army of spiders. Katherine set her carpetbag down and fought the urge to cry. She had known it would be rough. The land office clerk had warned her, but knowing and seeing were 2 different things entirely. You have got to be the bravest or most foolish woman I have ever seen. Katherine spun around, her hand flying to the small pistol in her coat pocket. A man stood in the doorway, backlit by morning sun so she could not see his face clearly. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a hat pulled low and his hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. "I did not mean to startle you," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I saw smoke from the direction of the old Daniels place and thought I should check. Nobody has been out here in years." "There is no smoke," Katherine said, not moving her hand from the pistol. "Figure of speech. I saw someone coming this way." He stepped back, out of the doorway and into the light, and Katherine got her first real look at him. He was maybe 30, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that needed cutting. His clothes were work-worn but clean, and his boots were good quality. A rancher, she guessed, or a successful one at least. "Name is Wade Watson. I run cattle on the property that borders yours to the north, Katherine Daniels." She released the pistol but did not step closer. "This is my land. My father filed the claim. I remember your father." Wade removed his hat, holding it against his chest. "He came through 3 years back, stayed a week working on this place, then headed back east. Said he would return with his family come spring. I am sorry he did not make it." The kindness in his voice made her throat tight. "Thank you." "You planning to live here, alone?" "I am planning to make it livable first. Then yes, alone." Wade looked around the cabin, his expression doubtful but not unkind. "You know anything about carpentry, roofing, masonry? I can sew a straight seam and keep accounts. I figure I can learn the rest." "Figure wrong." He said it bluntly but not meanly. This place needs real work before winter, and winter comes early and hard up here. You have maybe 4 months if you are lucky." Katherine lifted her chin. "Then I had better get started." She expected him to argue, to tell her what she could not do, what she should do instead. Men always had opinions about what women should do. But Wade just studied her for a long moment, something like respect flickering across his face. "I will send my ranch hand tomorrow with some tools and supplies. You will need proper windows before the cold sets in. I cannot pay you. Did not ask you to." He settled his hat back on his head. "Your father helped me round up strays when he was here, only neighborly to return the favor." He was gone before she could argue, riding a big roan horse that had been ground tied near her mare. Katherine watched him go, confused and grateful and suspicious all at once. In her experience, men did not help women without expecting something in return. But maybe things were different out here. Maybe they had to be, with so few people and so much empty land. She spent the rest of the day cleaning, which mostly meant sweeping out debris and mouse nests, pulling down cobwebs, and discovering that the cabin was in even worse shape than she had thought. The floorboards in one corner were rotted through. The chimney was so clogged with old nests that she did not dare light a fire. The pump outside was rusted solid. By evening, her hands were blistered and her back ached. She ate cold beans from a tin and made a bed from her 2 blankets in the least damaged corner of the room. Through the gap where a window should be, she could see stars beginning to appear, more stars than she had ever seen in St. Louis. The vastness of the sky made her feel small and alone, but also strangely free. Nobody here knew her. Nobody here expected her to be anything but what she chose to be. She fell asleep to the sound of coyotes singing in the distance. Wade Watson arrived himself the next morning, driving a wagon loaded with lumber, tools, and a new iron stove still in its crate. Katherine was outside trying to work the pump handle loose with her bare hands, and had managed only to tear open the blisters from yesterday. "You are going to hurt yourself," Wade said, jumping down from the wagon seat. "Already did." She showed him her palms, bloody and raw. He shook his head and went to the wagon, returning with a tin of salve and clean cloth. "Let me see. I can manage. I know you can. Let me see anyway." His hands were gentle as he cleaned and bandaged her palms, his touch careful and impersonal as a doctor's. Up close, she could see his eyes were gray, like storm clouds, and his jaw was shadowed with stubble. There was a scar along his left cheekbone, thin and white with age. "You need gloves," he said, tying off the last bandage, "and you need to let me help with the heavy work." "Why?" The question came out sharper than she meant it. "Why would you do that?" Wade sat back on his heels, meeting her gaze directly. "Because your father was a good man who helped a stranger. Because I got the time and the skill. Because it is the right thing to do." He paused. "And because I got a feeling if I do not help, you are going to kill yourself trying to do it alone, and I do not want that on my conscience." Katherine wanted to argue, to insist she did not need his charity, but the truth was she did need help. Pride would not fix a roof or replace rotted floorboards. "I cannot pay you," she said again. "Stop saying that. I am not asking for payment." "Then what are you asking for?" "Nothing." "Can you accept that?" She looked at him, this stranger who had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had not known how to pray. "I am not used to people helping without strings attached." "I got no strings, Miss Daniels, just good intentions and a hammer." He stood and offered her his hand to help her up. She took it. They worked together all that day. Wade climbed up on the roof and cleared the broken shingles while Katherine handed up new ones from the ladder below. He was patient with her questions, explaining how the shingles overlapped, why they started at the bottom and worked up. By noon, they had one section of roof repaired and the worst of the leaks patched. They ate lunch sitting on the porch steps he had also fixed that morning. Katherine had brought out bread and cheese and apples, and Wade contributed dried beef and a canteen of cold water. "How long have you been ranching?" she asked. 10 years. Came out here after the war, used my army pay to buy land and a starter herd." He bit into an apple, chewing thoughtfully. "It is a hard life, but an honest one. I like working for myself, answering to nobody but the weather and the market." "Were you cavalry, infantry? Saw more mud than glory, more death than I care to remember." His voice went flat, distant. The war was a long time ago, Katherine understood. Some memories were too painful to examine in daylight. "My father fought too. He never talked about it. Smart man." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. Katherine watched it and tried to imagine herself a year from now, 2 years, 5. Would she still be here? Would this place ever feel like home? "What made you come out here alone?" Wade asked. "Most women would not. Most women have better options." She brushed crumbs from her skirt. "I was supposed to marry a man in St. Louis. He was not a good man, so I came here instead." "Brave choice. Or foolish. Your words from yesterday." "I am leaning toward brave." He met her eyes, and something passed between them, some recognition or understanding that made Katherine's breath catch. They worked until sunset, accomplishing more in one day than Katherine could have managed in a week. Wade refused her offer to sleep in the barn, saying he needed to get back to his ranch but would return the next day. After he left, Katherine stood in her cabin with its new roof section and repaired door and felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Hope, maybe, or possibility. Wade came back every day that week. He fixed the chimney, replaced the broken windows with real glass, and started work on the rotten floorboards. Katherine learned to swing a hammer without hitting her thumb, to measure twice and cut once, to read a level. She also learned that Wade took his coffee black, had a dry sense of humor that snuck up on you, and sang off-key when he thought she could not hear him. On Sunday, he did not come. Katherine told herself she was not disappointed, that she had no right to expect him every day, that he had his own ranch to run. She spent the day washing her few clothes in a bucket and mending a tear in her second dress. The silence felt heavier than usual. Monday morning, Wade arrived with a woman in the wagon seat beside him. She was older, maybe 50, with iron gray hair and a face like weathered leather. "This is Martha Henley," Wade said. "She runs the boarding house in town and knows everyone worth knowing. Martha, this is Katherine Daniels." "Call me Kate," Katherine said automatically, then wondered why. She had always been Katherine. Martha climbed down from the wagon with surprising agility and looked around the property with a critical eye. "Well, Wade has not been exaggerating. You got gumption, girl, I will give you that." "Is that a compliment?" "Out here it is." Martha turned to Wade. "You going to stand there gawking or get to work?" Wade grinned and unloaded the wagon, which today carried a bewildering array of items. A real bed frame, a table and 2 chairs, curtains, dishes, and food staples in sacks and tins. Katherine stared at the growing pile. "I cannot accept all this." "Sure you can," Martha said briskly. "Half of it is cast-offs nobody needed anyway. The other half is a loan until you get on your feet." She hefted a sack of flour like it weighed nothing. "Where do you want your kitchen?" The three of them worked together, and Katherine found she liked Martha immediately. The older woman was blunt and funny and full of practical advice about living in Colorado territory. She told stories about Fort Collins in its early days, about the floods and fires and the winter of '73 when the snowdrifts reached the second-story windows. "That is when I learned to always keep 3 months of supplies on hand," Martha said, hanging the curtains Kate had sewn for her in St. Louis and brought west with her. And to never trust a man who claims he can predict the weather. Nobody can, not out here. Wade worked mostly in silence, assembling the bed frame and reinforcing the new floorboards. But Katherine caught him smiling at Martha's stories, and once or twice he added a detail or a correction that made Martha swat at him with a dish towel. They ate dinner together, the three of them crowded around the new table. Martha had brought a pot of stew that she heated on the new stove Wade had installed 2 days ago, and it was the best thing Katherine had tasted since leaving Missouri. Real beef and potatoes and carrots, seasoned with herbs and love. "This place is going to be real nice once it is finished," Martha said, mopping up stew with a piece of bread. "You got good land here, Kate. Your daddy chose well. I just wish he could have seen it. Maybe he can." Martha patted her hand. "I believe the dead watch over us sometimes, making sure we do not mess up too badly." After dinner, Martha insisted on doing the dishes while Wade and Katherine went outside to look at the barn, which was in even worse shape than the cabin had been. The sun was setting, painting the mountains gold and purple and deep rose. The air smelled of grass and pine and the faint musk of cattle from Wade's ranch. "Thank you for bringing Martha," Katherine said. "I did not realize how much I needed another woman to talk to. She has a good heart. And she knows how to organize the town ladies. They will come around once they get used to the idea of you." "Do I need them to get used to me? Helps to have friends out here. Winter gets lonely." They walked toward the barn, their boots swishing through the tall grass. Katherine was intensely aware of Wade beside her, the warmth of his presence, the easy way they moved together. She had never felt this comfortable with a man before. The men she had known in St. Louis had always wanted something, always pushed. Wade just existed beside her, solid and calm as a mountain. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked quietly. Wade stopped walking. In the fading light, his face was half shadow. "You want the truth, please. At first it was because of your father, and because it is what neighbors do. But now," he looked at her, and his eyes were intense. "Now it is because I like you. I like your courage and your stubbornness and the way you do not give up even when you should probably be scared. I like working beside you. I like hearing you laugh when something goes right. I like who I am when I am around you." Katherine's heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Wade, I am not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know. You asked for truth. That is truth." "I like who I am around you too," she said, the words tumbling out. "I feel stronger, braver, like I can actually do this. You can, with or without me. But I would rather do it with you." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. Wade reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. "Kate," he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer. Martha's voice cut through the moment. "You two planning to fix that barn tonight or just admire it?" They sprang apart like guilty children. Wade cleared his throat, "Just assessing the damage." "Uh-huh." Martha stood on the porch, her arms crossed and her expression knowing. "Well, assess it tomorrow. It is getting dark, and Wade needs to drive me back to town before I miss my own curfew." Wade left with Martha, but not before squeezing Katherine's hand and promising to return in the morning. Katherine watched the wagon disappear into the twilight, then went inside her cabin, her real cabin with its repaired roof and new windows and the lingering smell of Martha's stew. She touched her cheek, where Wade had touched it, and smiled. The summer days blurred together in a pattern of work and progress. Wade came most mornings, sometimes alone, sometimes with one of his ranch hands, a young man named Tom who was shy but skilled with tools. Together they rebuilt the barn, replaced all the bad floorboards in the cabin, constructed a proper henhouse, and dug a new well when the old pump proved impossible to salvage. Katherine learned ranching from Wade with the same determination she had once applied to learning embroidery stitches. He taught her to read the weather in the clouds and the wind, to understand what the cattle needed by watching their behavior, to calculate feed costs and market prices. He brought her 3 chickens and a rooster, then a milk cow named Bess who was old but patient with Katherine's inexperienced hands. "Talk to her while you milk," Wade advised, demonstrating the rhythmic pull and squeeze that made the milk flow. "Animals know when you are nervous, and nervous makes them nervous." Katherine sat on the milking stool, her forehead pressed against Bess's warm flank, and talked about everything and nothing. The cow listened without judgment, and gradually Katherine's hands found the rhythm. When the first streams of milk pinged into the bucket, she laughed with delight. "There you go," Wade said, and the pride in his voice warmed her more than the summer sun. Martha came to visit every week, usually bringing food or supplies or both, and always bringing news from town. The banker's wife was pregnant again. The new schoolteacher was a young man from Boston who wore spectacles and did not know how to ride. 2 ranches had sold to a cattle company from Denver, and some folks were worried about big money squeezing out the small operators. "Wade should watch himself," Martha said one afternoon, shelling peas on Kate's porch. "That company has been sniffing around his property too, offering good money." "He would not sell, would he?" Katherine asked, alarmed at how much the thought disturbed her. "Not Wade. He loves that land." "But money talks, especially when someone is struggling." Martha gave her a shrewd look. "Of course, a man with a wife and a family has more reason to stay put than a man alone. Martha, I am just saying, that man spends more time here than at his own ranch lately. Tom told me Wade has been neglecting his own repairs to fix up yours. I did not ask him to do that." "I know you did not, girl. That is what makes it sweet." Martha patted her knee. "Wade is a good man, best I have known. He deserves someone who sees that." "I do see it." "Then maybe let him know." But Katherine did not know how. She had no experience with this, with wanting someone and being wanted in return. The men who had courted her in St. Louis had been her aunt's choice, not hers, and their attention had felt like obligation rather than desire. What she felt for Wade was different. It was in the way her day felt incomplete until he arrived, the way she noticed details about him she had no business noticing, like the way his hair curled slightly at his collar when it needed cutting, or how his whole face changed when he smiled. It was in the catch of her breath when their hands accidentally touched, the way time seemed to slow when he looked at her with those storm-gray eyes. One evening in late July, Wade stayed for dinner. Katherine had made venison stew from meat he had brought, and biscuits that actually turned out right for once. They ate outside as the sun set, sitting on the porch steps shoulder to shoulder. "I need to go to Denver next week," Wade said. "Got some business with a cattle buyer. I will be gone maybe for days." 4 days felt like a lifetime. "That is fine, I will manage." "I know you will, but I wanted to tell you in case you wondered." "I would have wondered." The admission slipped out before she could stop it. Wade set down his plate and turned to look at her fully. "Kate, we need to talk about what is happening here." Her heart began to race. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean, this." He gestured between them. "Us. I have been trying to be respectful, to give you space to settle in and figure out your life, but I cannot stop thinking about you. When I am at my ranch, I am thinking about you. When I am working my cattle, I am wondering what you are doing. When I go to sleep at night, I am seeing your face." Katherine could not breathe. "Wade, I am falling in love with you," he said simply. "Maybe have already fallen. And I need to know if there is any chance you feel the same, because if not, I need to step back. It is not fair to either of us otherwise. You love me." The words came out as a whisper. "I do. I love your courage and your determination. I love how you never complain even when the work is backbreaking. I love your laugh and your fierce independence and the way you talk to Bess while you milk her. I love that you came out here alone and made a home from nothing. I love you, Kate." Tears burned her eyes. "I was so afraid you just saw me as a duty, your neighbor to help out of obligation. Not for a long time now. I love you too," she said, and saying it felt like flying. "I think I started falling that first day when you did not tell me I was foolish, when you just offered to help. And then every day after, watching you work, listening to you teach me, seeing how kind you are, how patient. I love you, Wade." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Can I kiss you, please?" His lips were soft and warm and tasted like coffee. The kiss started gentle, almost tentative, then deepened as Katherine leaned into him and wrapped her arms around his neck. She had been kissed before, quick stolen pecks from boys who did not matter, but this was different. This was Wade, and kissing him felt like coming home and setting out on an adventure all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Wade pressed his forehead against hers. "Marry me," Katherine laughed, giddy with happiness. "You just told me you loved me 30 seconds ago." "I know." "Marry me anyway." "That is not a proper proposal. Katherine Daniels, you are the strongest, bravest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You make me want to be better. You make me believe in second chances and new beginnings. I want to spend every day for the rest of my life helping you with your chores and listening to your dreams and kissing you until we are both breathless. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Katherine felt something settle into place inside her. Some piece she had not known was missing, clicking into its proper spot. This was right. This was real. They sat together as full darkness fell, Wade's arm around her shoulders and Kate's head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat and watching fireflies dance in the grass. They talked about the future, about combining their properties, about where they would live and how they would manage 2 ranches. Wade wanted to build her a real house, bigger than the cabin, with a parlor and a kitchen and bedrooms for the children they both wanted. "How many children?" Kate asked. "How many do you want?" "At least 3, maybe 4. I was an only child and always wished for siblings." "4 sounds perfect." He kissed the top of her head. "We will fill this valley with family." Wade left for Denver the following Monday. He stopped by the cabin at dawn to say goodbye, and Kate walked out to meet him, already dressed for the day's work. "For days," he said, holding her close. "Then I will be back and we will figure out the wedding. I will be here. I love you. I love you too. Be safe." She watched him ride away and felt the emptiness of the valley settle around her. For days. She could manage for days. The first day was not so bad. She kept busy cleaning and organizing, rearranging furniture and planning where things would go when she and Wade combined households. The second day dragged. She worked in the garden she had started, pulling weeds and watering the vegetables that were finally beginning to thrive. The third day, she rode into town to visit Martha and buy supplies. Fort Collins was busier than usual, crowded with cowboys and miners and families in from their homesteads. Kate navigated the muddy Main Street carefully, tying her mare outside the general store. Inside, she found Martha chatting with the owner, a portly man named George. "Kate." Martha embraced her warmly. "I was just thinking about you. Have you heard the news?" "What news?" "That cattle company from Denver made an offer on the Morrison Ranch. Big money, twice what the land is worth. Sam Morrison is thinking about taking it." "That is the ranch on Wade's western border, right?" "Right. And if they buy Morrison, they will squeeze Wade from 2 sides. Martha looked worried. These big companies, they do not like small operations in their way. They pressure folks to sell. Kate's stomach twisted. Wade would not sell. I hope not, but pressure is pressure and money is money. Kate bought her supplies and headed home, Martha's words echoing in her mind. She tried not to worry. Wade loved his ranch, had built it from nothing. He would not sell, especially not now when they were planning a future together. The fourth day, she woke early and cleaned the entire cabin, baked bread, and made a pot roast that she set to cook slowly on the stove. She wanted everything perfect for when Wade returned. She changed into her best dress, the blue calico with the white lace collar, and actually did something with her hair beyond braiding it out of the way. By noon, she was watching the road. By mid-afternoon, she was pacing. By evening, she was worried. Wade had said 4 days. It had been 4 days. She forced herself to eat dinner alone, watching the pot roast congeal in its juices and fighting the knot of anxiety in her stomach. Maybe he had been delayed. Maybe the business took longer than expected. Maybe a wheel broke on his wagon. Maybe his horse went lame. Maybe stop it, she told herself firmly. He is fine. He will be here. But he was not. The 5th day dragged past with no sign of Wade. Kate tried to work but could not focus. She kept walking to the road, scanning the horizon, seeing nothing but empty land and distant mountains. By evening, she was seriously frightened. This was not like Wade. He would have sent word if he was delayed. Something was wrong. The 6th day, she decided to ride to Wade's ranch and see if any of his hands had news. She saddled her mare at dawn and set out north, following the boundary between her land and Wade's until she reached his ranch house. It was a solid structure, bigger than her cabin, with a barn and several outbuildings. Tom, Wade's ranch hand, was mending fence near the main gate. "Miss Daniels." He looked surprised to see her. "What brings you here? Have you seen Wade? He was supposed to return from Denver 2 days ago." Tom's expression shifted to concern. "No, madam, but I have only been back a day myself, been helping my folks with their harvest." He set down his tools. "You want me to ride into town, ask around, please? I am probably worrying for nothing, but no, you are right to worry. Wade is reliable. If he said 4 days, he meant 4 days." Kate rode with Tom back to Fort Collins, and they went directly to the telegraph office. The operator, a nervous young man with ink-stained fingers, checked his records. "Nothing from Denver for Wade Watson. But I got a wire here for Katherine Daniels, came in yesterday." Kate's hands shook as she took the telegram. She opened it and read, "Detained in Denver, stop legal matter, stop, do not worry, stop home, soon stop Wade." Relief flooded through her, followed quickly by confusion. Legal matter? What legal matter? "At least he is all right," Tom said, reading over her shoulder. "Legal trouble, though, that is strange. Wade is about the most law-abiding man I know." Kate folded the telegram carefully. "Will you help me find out what is going on?" "Yes, madam." They spent the afternoon asking questions. The general store owner had heard nothing. The saloon keeper knew only that the Denver Cattle Company was buying up property. But Martha, when they found her at the boarding house, had information. "I heard something yesterday," she said, inviting them into her sitting room. "The cattle company is claiming Wade owes them money from some old debt. They filed papers in Denver to seize his property." "That is impossible," Kate said. "Wade would have mentioned a debt like that. Unless he did not know about it, or unless it is not real." Martha's face was grim. "These big companies, they play rough sometimes. They want land, they find ways to get it." Tom stood abruptly. "I am riding to Denver. Wade might need help." "I am coming with you," Kate said. "Miss Daniels, it is a hard 2-day ride. I am coming." They left within the hour, riding fast and stopping only briefly to rest the horses. Kate had never ridden so far or so hard, and by the time they stopped for the night at a way station, every muscle in her body screamed. But she did not complain. Wade needed her, and she would ride through fire to reach him if necessary. They arrived in Denver on the evening of the second day, dusty and exhausted. The city was overwhelming after months in the quiet valley, all noise and people and buildings crowding together. Tom asked directions and led them to the courthouse, an imposing brick structure in the center of town. They found Wade in a lawyer's office on the second floor. He looked terrible, unshaven and worn, his clothes rumpled. But when he saw Kate, his whole face transformed. "Kate, what are you doing here?" She crossed the room and threw her arms around him, not caring that the lawyer and Tom were watching. "I got your telegram. What is happening?" "Some company claiming I owe them $5,000 for cattle I supposedly bought 3 years ago. They have papers with my signature, only I never bought those cattle and that is not my signature." His voice was rough with frustration. "They filed a claim against my property. If I cannot prove the debt is false, they can take my ranch. That is insane." "You must have proof. That is the problem. I do not keep records from 3 years ago for transactions I did not make, and the judge here seems inclined to believe their papers over my word." The lawyer, a thin man with spectacles, cleared his throat. "Miss, if I may, the case is complicated. The cattle company has documentation, while Mr. Watson has only his assertion that the signature is forged, without expert testimony or contradictory evidence." "Then we find expert testimony," Kate said firmly. "Who in Denver can analyze signatures?" The lawyer looked startled. "Well, there is a man, a document examiner who does work for the banks. But his services are expensive." "How expensive?" $200, perhaps more. Kate did not hesitate. "I will pay it. Where do we find him?" Wade caught her arm. "Kate, you cannot spend that kind of money on my problem. It is our problem, and yes, I can. I have money from the sale of my aunt's house. It has been sitting in my petticoat waiting for an emergency. This is an emergency. I cannot let you. You are not letting me do anything. I am choosing to do it. Now, where is this document examiner?" They found him at his home, a tidy house on the edge of the city. His name was Mr. Pemberton, and he was elderly but sharp-eyed. Kate explained the situation while Wade showed him the papers from the cattle company. Mr. Pemberton studied the signature through a magnifying glass, comparing it to samples of Wade's genuine signature. He made small humming noises as he worked, occasionally making notes on a pad. "This is a forgery," he said finally, "and not even a particularly good one. See here." He pointed to specific letters. "The formation of the letters is wrong. This person has studied Mr. Watson's signature, certainly, but they have not mastered the natural flow of his writing. These hesitation marks here and here indicate someone copying rather than writing naturally." Relief made Kate's knees weak. "You can testify to that in court." "I can and will. This sort of fraud is reprehensible." He named his fee, and Kate paid him from the money she had carried in her carpetbag, not trusting it to stay hidden in her petticoat during the hard ride. The court hearing was the next morning. Kate sat in the gallery with Tom while Wade and his lawyer presented Mr. Pemberton's testimony. The old man was compelling on the stand, explaining in clear terms how the signature was forged and pointing out specific examples. The lawyer for the cattle company tried to discredit him, but Mr. Pemberton held firm. The judge, a stern-faced man with a gray beard, took only 10 minutes to deliberate. He returned to the bench and fixed the cattle company's lawyer with a hard stare. "I find the evidence of forgery convincing. The debt is ruled invalid and all claims against Mr. Watson's property are dismissed. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of fraud." He banged his gavel. "We are adjourned." Wade turned and found Kate in the crowd. She pushed through the people and met him at the rail. He lifted her off her feet and spun her around, both of them laughing with relief. "You saved me," he said. "You saved my ranch. We saved it together." They stayed in Denver one more night, at a respectable hotel where Tom insisted on taking a separate room and Kate and Wade took adjoining ones. They ate dinner in the hotel dining room, a celebration of roast chicken and wine and apple pie. "I will pay you back every cent," Wade promised. "No, you will not. That money was meant to build a life. That is what we are doing." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Kate Daniels, I do not deserve you, probably not, but you are stuck with me anyway." They rode home together, taking 3 days instead of 2, stopping at proper intervals to rest the horses and themselves. Kate was saddle-sore and sunburned and happier than she had ever been. Wade rode beside her, sometimes holding her hand when the trail was wide enough, sometimes singing those off-key songs that made her laugh. They reached her homestead on a golden afternoon. The valley spread out before them like a promise. The cabin looked solid and welcoming, smoke curling from the chimney because Kate had banked the fire before leaving. Everything was as she had left it, yet somehow different. Better. "Come with me to my ranch," Wade said as they dismounted. "I want to show you something." She rode with him to his property, and he led her to a hilltop that overlooked both his land and hers. The view was spectacular, mountains to the west and the valley rolling green to the east. "I want to build our house here," he said, "right here on this spot. So we can see both properties, watch over everything together. It is perfect. We can keep your cabin as a guest house or a bunkhouse, and we will work both properties together, combine the herds." He turned to face her. "Kate, I want to marry you as soon as possible. I do not want to wait." "Neither do I. Next week." Next week. They were married the following Saturday in Fort Collins, in the small church at the end of Main Street. Martha organized everything with the efficiency of a general, recruiting the town ladies to decorate the church and prepare a reception at the boarding house. Kate wore a new dress Martha helped her sew, white cotton with blue ribbon trim, and carried wildflowers Wade had picked that morning. The church was full. Kate had not realized how many people had come to care about her in the months since she arrived. The ranching families, the townspeople, even the banker and his pregnant wife. They all smiled at her as Wade walked her down the aisle, since there was no father to give her away. The minister was young and earnest, and he kept the service short. Wade's hands were steady as he slipped the ring on her finger, a simple gold band he had bought in Denver. Kate's hands shook, but her voice was clear when she made her vows. "I do. You may kiss your bride." Wade kissed her thoroughly, to the applause and whistles of the congregation. Kate laughed against his mouth, dizzy with joy. The reception was loud and cheerful, with food and music and dancing. Kate had never been to a party like this, where everyone was genuinely happy and the celebration was real. She danced with Wade, with Tom, with several ranchers whose names she was still learning. Martha hugged her so hard her ribs creaked. "Welcome to Fort Collins, Mrs. Watson. Mrs. Watson." Kate tried out the name in her mind and liked how it sounded. They spent their wedding night in the cabin, the little cabin Kate had claimed 6 months ago. Wade carried her over the threshold even though she laughed and protested, and he set her down gently in the middle of the room. "Hello, wife." "Hello, husband." He kissed her slowly, his hands gentle on her face and her hair. Kate had been nervous about this part, the wedding night, the intimacy she had never experienced. But Wade was patient, taking his time, making sure she was ready at every step. He undressed her carefully, kissing each new bit of skin he revealed, whispering how beautiful she was, how much he loved her. They made love on the bed Wade had built, under the roof Wade had repaired, in the cabin that had become a home because of Wade's help and Kate's determination, and the love they had found in each other. It hurt a little at first, and Kate gasped, but Wade held her and murmured comfort until the pain faded and there was only the warmth of being joined, of being one. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Kate's head on Wade's chest and his arms around her. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too. So much." She fell asleep feeling safe and cherished and whole. The summer faded into autumn and they began building the house on the hilltop. Wade hired a crew from town and the work went quickly. The house was 2 stories with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides, a kitchen big enough for Kate's ideas, a parlor with a stone fireplace, and 4 bedrooms upstairs. They moved in just before the first snow, carrying boxes and furniture up the hill while the mountains turned white. That winter was long and cold, just as Martha had warned. The snow piled high and the wind howled, and for weeks at a time they were trapped on the ranch, seeing no one but each other and Tom, who lived in the bunkhouse and helped Wade care for the cattle. But Kate did not mind. She had Wade, and that was enough. They played cards by the fire in the evenings. Wade taught her chess, and she beat him more often than he expected, which made him laugh. They read books aloud, taking turns with whatever volumes they could find or borrow from Martha. They made love in their big bed upstairs, learning each other's bodies, discovering what gave pleasure. And they talked, endless conversations about everything and nothing, their dreams and fears and the future they were building together. Spring came slowly, melting the snow and turning the world green again. Kate discovered she was pregnant in April, and Wade's joy was so complete it made her cry. He became impossibly protective, insisting she rest more and not lift anything heavy. She ignored most of his fussing but secretly loved it. Their son was born in January of 1879, during a blizzard that trapped the midwife at the ranch for 3 days. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Kate was certain she would die. But Wade held her hand through all of it, and Martha coached her through the pushing, and finally, a baby's cry filled the room. "A boy," Martha said, placing the squalling infant on Kate's chest. "A big, healthy boy." Kate looked down at her son, red-faced and angry and perfect, and fell completely in love. Wade touched the baby's tiny hand with one finger, his expression awed. "We made this," he said. "We did." They named him William after Kate's father. William Watson, born in a blizzard on a hilltop ranch in Colorado, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. Life fell into a rhythm. Kate cared for William while Wade and Tom worked the ranch. As William grew, Kate found herself able to help more with the outdoor work, strapping the baby to her back the way Martha showed her and going about her chores. William was an easy baby, content to watch the world from his perch. When William was 2, Kate became pregnant again. Their daughter was born in the summer of 1881, an easier birth that left Kate tired but triumphant. They named her Sarah, and she had Wade's dark hair and Kate's green eyes. William was fascinated by his little sister, wanting to help with everything, sometimes too enthusiastically. The ranch prospered. Wade's cattle brought good prices, and they were able to buy more land, expanding their holdings and their herd. The cattle company that had tried to cheat Wade went bankrupt after several other fraud cases came to light, and their land was divided and sold to honest ranchers. The valley filled with families, homesteaders and ranchers working together to build a community. Fort Collins grew too. More businesses opened, a new school was built, and the railroad finally came through, bringing easier access to markets and goods. Kate and Wade became pillars of the community, hosting gatherings at their ranch, helping new families get established, contributing to church and school. Martha remained Kate's closest friend. She aged gracefully, retiring from the boarding house and moving into a small cottage Wade and Kate built for her on their property. She spent her days helping with the children, telling stories of the old days, and generally being the grandmother neither Kate nor Wade had. In 1883, Kate gave birth to twins, 2 boys they named Daniel and David. The pregnancy was difficult and the birth terrifying, but both babies were healthy, and Kate recovered slowly. Wade hired a girl from town to help with the housework and the children, a cheerful 16-year-old named Lucy who adored the babies and took to ranch life easily. With 4 children under 6 years old, the house was chaos. But it was joyful chaos, full of laughter and noise and the constant motion of small bodies. Wade proved to be a patient father, teaching William to ride, helping Sarah with her letters, carrying the twins around one under each arm like sacks of flour. Kate sometimes stood on the porch of the hilltop house and looked out over the valley, remembering that first day she had arrived. The broken-down cabin, the sagging fence, the overwhelming solitude. It felt like a lifetime ago. It felt like yesterday, thinking deep thoughts. Wade asked, coming to stand beside her. He had gray in his hair now, lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. He was 39 years old and still the handsomest man she had ever seen. Just remembering, when I first came here, I was so scared. I tried not to show it, but I was terrified. I know, I could see it, even though you tried to hide it, and you helped anyway. Best decision I ever made. He pulled her close and she leaned into him, fitting perfectly against his side. You changed my life, Kate. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions. You gave me purpose and joy and a family. You gave me everything. You gave me everything too, a home, love, all of this. She gestured at the valley, the ranch, the life they had built. I could never have imagined being this happy. William came running around the corner of the house, chasing a chicken and laughing hysterically. Sarah followed him, shouting that he was going to scare it and it would not lay eggs. The twins toddled after their siblings, determined not to be left out. Wade sighed. I better go rescue that chicken. I will help. They went together, corralling children and poultry with practiced efficiency. This was their life now, this beautiful mess of family and ranch and community. It was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, sick cattle and broken fences, childhood illnesses that terrified them and financial worries that kept them up at night. But they faced it all together, Kate and Wade, partners in every sense of the word. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. William grew tall and serious, helping his father with the ranch work and talking about becoming a rancher himself. Sarah was bright and curious, always reading, always asking questions. The twins were trouble, matching mischief makers who could never be told apart by anyone but their parents. When Kate was 35, she became pregnant one final time. It was unexpected, unplanned, but welcome. Wade fretted through the entire pregnancy, remembering the difficulty of the twins. But this baby, their 5th and last, came easily. A girl, born on a warm September evening with the windows open and the smell of hay drifting up from the fields. They named her Margaret, after Wade's mother. She was tiny and perfect, with a head full of dark curls and a temperament so calm it worried them at first. But she was simply an easy baby, content to observe the chaos of her older siblings with wide, solemn eyes. The hilltop house rang with life. Children playing and arguing and laughing. Friends visiting for dinner. Martha telling stories to anyone who would listen. Tom, who still worked the ranch and now had a wife and children of his own in the bunkhouse Wade had expanded into a proper cottage. Kate's hair started to gray at her temples. Wade's face grew more lined. But they still held hands on the porch in the evenings, still kissed goodbye each morning, still looked at each other across the dinner table and marveled at what they had built together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Wade gave Kate a painting. He had commissioned it from an artist in Denver, working from a photograph. It showed the valley as it had looked that first day Kate arrived, with the broken-down cabin and sagging fences, and in the foreground, a young woman on a horse, looking at her new home with a mixture of fear and determination. "So we never forget where we started," Wade said as Kate cried over the painting. "I could never forget. That day changed my life, changed both our lives." They hung the painting in the parlor where everyone could see it. Visitors always asked about it, and Kate and Wade would tell the story of how they met, how he helped her fix up the homestead, how they fell in love working side by side. The story became part of the family history, told and retold until the children knew it by heart. William married young, at 20, to a rancher's daughter from the next valley over. They built a house on the eastern edge of Kate and Wade's property and started their own herd. Within a year, they had given Kate and Wade their first grandchild, a boy named after Wade. Sarah went to college, shocking everyone by insisting on studying to become a teacher. Kate and Wade supported her, proud of her ambition even as they worried about her being so far from home. She returned with a degree and a husband, a kind young man who was also a teacher, and they took positions at the Fort Collins School. The twins went into ranching together, combining their resources to buy land to the south. They remained close all their lives, finishing each other's sentences and playing tricks on people who could not tell them apart. Margaret, their baby, proved to have a talent for animals. She could gentle the wildest horse, calm the most nervous cow. Wade said she had a gift, and he was right. When she was 16, she started taking in horses other people had given up on, rehabilitating them with patience and skill. By 18, she had built a reputation, and people came from all over Colorado to have her work with their horses. Kate and Wade grew older together, their hair turning fully gray, their movements slower but no less determined. The ranch continued to prosper under their management and, increasingly, under Williams as he took on more responsibility. They spent more time on the porch, watching grandchildren play in the yard where their own children had played. On a summer evening, when Kate was 54 and Wade 61, they sat together on that porch watching the sun set behind the mountains. The valley was green and gold in the slanting light, the cattle dark shapes moving slowly through the grass. Grandchildren's laughter drifted up from the yard where Margaret was showing them how to feed the chickens properly. "You ever regret it?" Kate asked. "That I showed up and disrupted your life?" Wade turned to her, his gray eyes still as clear and sharp as they had been 30 years ago. "Not for one single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Kate Watson. Then, now, and always. I love you. I love you too." He took her hand, his fingers lacing through hers, weathered hands that had built a home and raised children and worked the land together. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower, painting the sky orange and pink and purple. This was their happily ever after. Not perfect, not without struggles, but real and earned and precious. Kate had come to Colorado alone and afraid, claiming an abandoned homestead with nothing but courage and determination. Wade had helped her fix it up, and somewhere along the way they had fixed each other, two broken pieces becoming whole together. The ranch would continue after them, passed down to their children and grandchildren, each generation adding to the story. But the foundation would always be Kate and Wade, the woman who claimed a homestead and the rancher who stayed. Years later, when they were both old and gray, sitting on the porch was their favorite activity. They would watch the valley change with the seasons, watch their grandchildren grow, watch the sun rise and set over the land they loved. And every single day, Wade would take Kate's hand and tell her he loved her, and Kate would say it back, and they would both know how lucky they had been to find each other in that valley so many years ago. Kate lived to be 78, Wade to 85. They were buried on the hilltop near the house they had built, side by side under the vast Colorado sky. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered for the funerals, telling stories of Kate's courage and Wade's kindness, of the love that had built a family and a legacy. The ranch continued, generation after generation, but the story of Kate and Wade was never forgotten. The painting of the broken-down cabin hung in the parlor, a reminder of where it all began. And on summer evenings, when the light was just right, you could almost see them on the porch, holding hands and watching the sunset, together for all eternity.